Okay, so this is lesson 5 in our unit, and it's a lesson that you're going to go about at your own pace asynchronously. You can follow along by taking the notes on notebook paper and labeling them Unit 1, Lesson 5. You can also click on the notebook icon and either print the PDF or upload it into something like Cami so that you can annotate. We're going to start with the opening exercise. Name the angle 3 ways. So we have an angle that's pictured there, and it has 3 capital letters on it. An angle, remember, is formed when 2 rays are joined at their common endpoint. And in this particular problem, the common endpoint is the V. So we can actually call this just plain old angle V, and that is known as its vertex, which is also very important to know. And so we can name it by its vertex simply as angle V. We can also name it with the other letters involved. So if we get the sides of the angle involved, it would be angle UVW and also angle WVU. And what you want to keep in mind is notice that when I use 3 letters, the letter that I said was the vertex is the letter in the middle. State the vertex, already talked about that. That is the point known as V. For part C, to name the rays of this angle, we have to be careful to make sure that we understand that the ray actually begins at the point V for each of them. So this would be VU with the arrowhead for the hat that we talked about in class before over the U. And then for the other side of this angle, it would be VW, and same situation, the arrowhead should be over top of the W just like it is in the diagram. Okay, so the focus of this lesson and also the lesson you're going to do in class this week is the angle addition postulate, and also we're going to deal a little bit with angle bisectors too. So what you're noticing in the box that says angle addition postulate is the definition of that postulate as well as a diagram. I think it's easier to take a look at the diagram and the equation that's above it to kind of understand the concept. Basically, you have 2 rays that are joined at the vertex B. So we have the ray BC and we have the ray BA, and that's formed the angle ABC. Well, if there's a point in the interior means inside, so if we have the point D inside that angle, kind of between the 2 rays, then there exists another ray that would follow from the vertex through that point D, and thus create 2 smaller angles. So we kind of have angle 1, angle 2, and then we have the whole thing angle 3. And this relationship is very similar to the segment addition postulate that we studied last week, in that part plus part would equal whole, pretty common sense. The small angles are going to have to add up to the larger angle, the main angle. So we have 60 degrees for one of them, 40 for the other, and 60 plus 40 would tell us the measure of angle ABC, which has to be 100, and that's what the angle addition postulate says. Okay, moving on to some of the examples about angle addition postulate. The first example is going to ask us to complete an angle addition postulate statement. So we're going to deal mainly in symbols. We're not going to really do anything else besides that. It says complete the following statement, which refers to the figure at the right. We have the measure of angle LMN. That's how you read this right here. The measure of angle LMN is equal to the measure of angle what plus the measure of angle what. So this is your angle addition postulate. Let's examine the figure and see if we can fill in the right letters. It says the measure of angle LMN. So I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to slide from L to M and out to N. So that helps me understand, and especially if you're someone that uses highlighters or colored markers at home, it helps me understand that they are giving me the big angle, the whole thing. Whenever I have those 2 outer rays, that's my whole angle. And I assume that if I've understood the angle addition postulate correctly, that the whole angle is equal to the 2 parts. So my next job is to figure out what are the parts. Well, we have this ray in the interior passing through the point P, and that has created 2 smaller angles for us. So to name one of them, we would start with L, head to M, and out to P. So to name that angle there is going to be LMP. And by the way, you could also call it PML. As long as I can take my finger and run it across your sequence of letters and M would be in the middle, that would be fine. So the angle that is on top, the other part angle of this whole angle, is involving N, M, and P. So in the same situation, you can call that NMP as I ran my pen over it, or PMN. Either way is fine. So I'm going to call it NMP. And what I've just done is I've set up the angle addition postulate. The green angle plus the blue angle should add up to the red angle, the whole angle. So we've completed the angle addition postulate for the figure in question 1. In question 2, we are going to actually model an equation after that postulate. I am going to write the postulate out first and then substitute to get like a little equation going, sort of like we did with segment addition. I just noticed that my 54 floated, so I apologize. I hope you can see that what angle BGH equals. Here we go. This is a little bit tricky sometimes because we have to put the information onto the picture and we have to make sure we get it in the right place. So we have find the measure of angle FGH if the measure of angle FGB equals 105. I'm going to start with that given piece of information right here and try to get it on the picture. If I tap with my pencil, F, then G, then B, I passed over the G in the middle of that tapping sequence, or running my pencil over those letters in that sequence, and that means that the angle that they're speaking about has the vertex at G. So that means that 105 is this angle right here, this measure of the opening between those rays. So that's 105 degrees. We are also told, and the measure of angle BGH, again it's over here, is 54 degrees. So BGH, let me tap again, BGH, let me use a different color. That's here, BGH, and I went to the G and out to the H, so that kind of made it this angle right here. And that's going to be 54. It's a little hard to squeeze it in there. So we have 105 degrees for the red angle, 54 degrees for the blue angle. They are both the parts, is what I'm noticing about my diagram right away. And I'm going to just double check if what they're asking me to find is the whole thing. F, G, H. I've just been running my pencil over those letters. And yes, they are asking me to find the whole or the major angle. So to set this up and solve it, first I want to set up the angle addition postulate in variables, kind of like I have up here. So just so we're clear, the measure of angle FGH, if I'm going to find that, it's going to be equal to the measure of angle FGB plus the measure of angle BGH, because those are the parts. And again, you don't have to set this up for me on every question. I just like to do it when you're learning it. What we're going to do next is a little substitution. So since FGB was 105, and since BGH was 54, this is kind of just following by substitution. And it's a very simple problem, just like the first few we did with segment addition. We know that the measure of angle FGH is going to equal 105 plus 54. And that is 159. Okay, so we've done the task in question number 2 as well. We found the missing measure for the diagram given. Number 3 is up next. This one is the trickiest because what I'm noticing right away is that there's no diagram provided. So I'm going to have to draw this scenario myself if I want to be successful, is the major thing I want to stress, because most kids try not to draw anything and then it's just impossible if you don't. So the direction for drawing the diagram yourself is in the first sentence. I'm going to underline it. To get this correct, we want to make sure that D is on the interior of angle ABC. What the heck does that look like? Well, you just draw yourself an angle ABC. I always draw my angle pretty much looking the same way all the time. This is my angle. I'm going to put A here, B here, C here, because again, the letter in the middle has to be the vertex, so that's B. D is in the interior just means that there's this floating point D that's between my two open rays, and if I connect my vertex B through it, what I just did was create the opportunity for the angle addition postulate to happen, because now I have two parts and a whole. If angle ABD measures 78 degrees is my next piece of given information for my picture, I'm going to take my pencil and tap A to B to D, and I basically realized that it's that little top angle right there, okay, ABD. The other piece of information I'm given is that ABC is 120, ABC. Oh, actually, that's the whole thing. Sometimes I show it like that to myself. I'll do like a, that marking is like a way to mark angles, and I'll do it over everything to show myself that it's the whole thing is 120. And then they're asking us to find the measure of angle DBC. So DBC, oh yeah, just as I suspected, they want us to figure out what this one is. So, so if we're going to find this angle here that I've colored in green, this is still angle addition postulate. I can set it up in the symbolized format, and what that would look like would be that the whole angle, the measure of angle ABC, is equal to the part known as ABD plus the part known as DBC. So if I fill in what I know, I actually know the measure of angle ABC. I was told it was 120. I'm going to put it in corresponding color. And I know that the measure of angle ABD was 78. And I don't know the measure of angle DBC. I could leave it the way that it is or make it an X if you feel comfortable. And the reason why I did go forward setting it up like this is because I want to show you that this could be solved like an equation, although most of you probably would use common sense or just a bit of arithmetic when looking at this diagram here, especially after learning segment addition. If we have the whole angle and one of the two parts, it's basically just a subtraction. So if we subtract the 78 on both sides of our equation here, if you want to call it that, we'll be able to obtain the same result as if we just kind of notice that we have the whole and a part, and when we're given the whole and a part, we subtract instead of when we were given, like up here, the two parts and we added them together. So to finish this up and squeeze it in, we would have 42 degrees is equal to the measure of angle DBC, and that would be our final answer. And I'm going to just kind of reiterate that that was really just 120 minus 78, and that gave us the 42. So, you know, showing some type of work is what I'm usually looking for. Up here, again, the 105 plus the 54. Here, it was the 120 minus the 78. And again, can't really be successful unless I drew that picture. These angles. Trying not to let the video get too long, but we still have to go over an angle bisector. An angle bisector, if I were to relate it to something that we talked about last week, it's just like a midpoint for a line segment. So since a midpoint creates two equal parts on a segment, an angle bisector does the same job, but for an angle. We define the angle bisector as a ray, a line, or a segment that divides an angle into two congruent angles. In geometry, this is a big word. Congruent is talking about the actual geometric piece, so those two angles would be the same exact size and measure. And for us, we're just going to probably use the word equal interchangeably with the word congruent. So congruent angles have equal measures. And if we try some problems about the angle bisector, we also have to remember that angle addition postulate still exists. We kind of have to learn about the angle addition postulate in order to be able to do angle bisector questions, because those angles that we're looking at still relate in that way, that part plus part should add up to whole. So PT, if we look at the directions they're given up here, is the angle bisector of angle RPS. Find the two angle measures not given in the diagram. So we're given pretty much the same diagram 3 different ways, and we're asked to find different angles in each diagram is the gist. PT as a ray is now dividing the angle into two equal angles is what we want to think about, because it has been defined as an angle bisector. So we can only assume that these two angles, these two parts are equal in measure if they tell us this. That's the big part about this piece of the lesson. So if I look at the diagram in number 4, it becomes pretty simple if I understand that PT is an angle bisector and that creates two equal angles. If the angle on the bottom is 19, the angle on the top has to also be 19. And the whole angle, because those are the two things we're concerned about in this picture. We have one part, now we have the other part. The whole thing would obviously be 19 plus 19, or 19 times 2, and that would obviously be 38 degrees. So for my fill-ins on the lines, we have to just basically get everything in the right spot based on understanding the middle letter and the sequence of letters. If we tap on R to P and then slide out to T, R, P, T, they're actually talking about the angle on the top in the first line, asking us for a response. So that would be 19 degrees. I'm going to assume, but I'm going to double check that RPS, yes, is the whole angle, and that's our 38 degrees. 2 more quick questions to go. Remember to keep taking your pencil and kind of coloring over the letters or tapping it out to make sure that you're recording the angles in the correct placements underneath each of the questions. So we're going to start with number 5, and in number 5 we are asked to find TPS and RPS. And just looking at the diagram, I can see that I know that this angle is 39. So if I want to find the other part, and I'm told that PT, this thing right here, is an angle bisector, then for that reason, this angle right here has to also be 39. If I want to record that on the line, I'm going to see TPS, T to P, out to S. Yes, this is 39 when I tap it out. RPS, yep, that's the whole thing. I just double checked with my eyes. R to P to S, that's the whole thing. So to find the whole thing, we would just do 39 plus 39 this time, and that's going to give us 78 for a final answer for the major angle. So this whole thing is 78 degrees. Okay, the last one, this one is a little bit tricky. I did my best to try to squeeze that arrow situation into that angle. And so what we're trying to show you here, and hopefully you can tell by the arrows at the interior of this big angle, we have 98 degrees, but it's trying to show you that the whole angle is 98 degrees. So if this whole angle is 98 degrees, basically, I want to know, if we read these questions one more time carefully, SPT, S to P to T. Yep, I want to know what this angle is. Sometimes I put a dot instead of the angle markings. I find it to be easier which location I'm talking about. And we also want to find TPR. So T to P to R. Yep, they want to know what this angle is. When I talk this one through out loud, it really helps me see how simple it is. If I know that the whole angle is 98 degrees, and I know that it has been bisected by PT, then simply put, this angle has a 98 degree whole angle that has been divided equally into 2 smaller angles. So 98 divided by 2 is 49. And that means that each of those angles that are the parts are 49 degrees. They have to be at the same measure because they are the parts again. So we have 49 degrees for this part and 49 degrees for this part. And according to the angle addition postulate, that makes sense. 49 plus 49 must add up to 98. So that's the lesson on angle addition postulate and angle bisectors with numbers only. Please head to the practice assignments, and you are able to take assignment number 1 once you have done all of the practice assignments. Assignment number 1 is a Google form, and it is single submission, so please remember that you must do all of the work in order to be successful on that Google form. Thank you.